In 2009, the Lunar Reconnaissance Probe took detailed photos of the lunar surface, showing evidence that the Apollo 11 lunar module and the installed equipment are in the Sea of Tranquility. This fact ended the debate and conspiracy theories rejecting that Apollo 11 landed on the Moon. Surely, lunar probes from other nations will be able to prove that equipment has indeed been installed on the Moon. But can we declare the Apollo 11 case closed? Well, it is not. In fact, NASA's 2009 photos give us new evidence to show that the Apollo 11 photos we see, taken by Armstrong and Aldrin, are very likely faked, and were taken in a movie studio, not on the Moon. Here, we will discuss some key aspects that demonstrate this fact. I made a clay-scale model of the Apollo 11 landing site based on NASA photos from 2009. I also made a simplified scale model of the lunar module, which has two parts. The base stays on the Moon, and the capsule on top returns the astronauts to lunar orbit. If NASA used a recording studio with a replica of the lunar landscape, for example, in a desert, creating craters and replicating all the details of the landing area, it had to have relied on the Apollo 10 photos, which flew at low altitude taking images of possible Apollo 11 landing sites. The lunar reconnaissance photos have a significant advantage over the Apollo 10 photos. They were taken during different times when the sun illuminates the terrain from various angles. To determine a crater's depth, you can examine its shadow length and compare it with the shadow of the base of the lunar module that remains there, which is 3 meters high. If we see, for example, a shadow in a crater whose length is 1/3 the length of the shadow of the lunar module, we can estimate that the crater is 1/3 the height of the lunar module, in this case, 1 meter deep. With this method, we can know the difference in the height of the side closer to the Sun. But we need to find out the height of the opposite side. It can be a symmetrical crater or asymmetric. That's a difficulty with the Apollo 10 photos because they were taken when the Sun was to the east, but we don't see pictures with the Sun to the west because that mission lasted only a few days. It differs from lunar reconnaissance, which has photos in which the Sun illuminates from various heights and angles. In the clay model I made, I used those photos from 2009. And I got a good result, without being perfect. So, according to the 2009 photos, we know that the spacecraft landed in this place. The astronauts raised the flag in this place. The TV camera tripod was set up here. From the direction of the sun's rays, we know that Armstrong was located north of the flag to take pictures of it and Aldrin waving it. However, it is surprising that Armstrong had to stand inside this crater, which is not logical. He couldn't have been close, as we would see him in the TV camera shots. Nor was he very far away, as the photos would show Aldrin and the flag much smaller. The spacecraft landed only 10 meters from this crater called Double Crater, but it is triple. It is astounding and suspicious that we do not see any pictures taken by the astronauts of these craters when they were walking around there. It would have been interesting to take a photo from one end, showing the crater in the foreground and the spacecraft behind it. But no photos show the double crater. But we find images of the spacecraft's surroundings, taken from the lunar module cabin, which gives us a panoramic view of the surrounding terrain where the double crater appears. If we compare the Apollo 11 photos with recent photos from 2009 and with this clay model, we see that there are significant differences. One of the two craters looks flat. We do not see the raised area that separates them. The third crater does not exist in the Apollo 11 photos. This crater on one side is in a different position. It looks closer to the edge of the double crater in the Apollo 11 photos than what NASA presented on the Moon's pictures in 2009. And it is two craters of the same size. Not one as large as we see in the Apollo 11 photos. If we plot a terrain profile in this direction, we see something like this. But it really should look like this. Other craters don't match or don't show up in the photos. Why are there significant differences in the craters? How can a lunar environment with no atmosphere, water, or erosion change so much in 40 years? Another important aspect is that the spacecraft is displaced about 6 meters. If we point to the southwest direction from the spaceship, we notice that in the Apollo 11 photos, that line passes over one of the craters. However, that same direction in the 2009 photos passes along the crater's edge, at the junction between the two craters that make up the double crater. We see the same thing in our scale model. Why is the spacecraft in another position? Another detail is that a photo taken to the north from the lunar module capsule window does not show this crater. It should be visible, but we don't see it in the Apollo 11 photos. In Google Earth, you can visit this Apollo 11 landing site and confirm that it should be visible. I think the explanation for why we don't see it is that the spacecraft is displaced to the west about 6 meters. It is not logical to see these differences between the Apollo 11 photos published in 1969 and the 2009 photos that show us what is on the Moon. The best explanation is that the Apollo 11 photos were taken in a recording studio created on Earth, simulating a lunar landscape. If Apollo 11 did not land on the Moon, who installed the equipment we see there? I think it was another mysterious Apollo mission. And it didn't land precisely at the designated site, but about 6 meters further east. It got pretty close, but not close enough. The conclusion that a film studio was used to take the Apollo 11 photos is also supported by other clues, such as the analysis of stereoscopic images of the lunar surface that show the presence of a curtain in the background where somebody drew the lunar horizon. And the study of the penumbra zone size in the astronauts' shadows proves that what illuminates the lunar landscape is not the sun, but a cinematographic lamp. And other findings support the theory that Apollo 11 never landed. I have included all these details and many more in my book, Apollo 11 Secret. Perhaps it is time for the sun to shine a light on the truth, for us to recognize and admit what really happened, and for us to learn from our mistakes. If we want to colonize the moon, it is ideal to get it right.